Hi everyone and welcome back. Okay, I've got a really lovely scene for you today. I'm drawing an image which was done by a watercolour artist called Helen Allingham. She's a British artist. She was born in Derbyshire in 1848 and she died in 1926. I've just recently bought several books of her work and I decided to have a go at this scene. Helen's kind of very famous for drawing typical English sort of chocolate box lid style watercolours, and I don't mean that in an offensive way at all. It's just that in the UK, watercolours with lots of flowers and old English cottages and that kind of thing, those old Victorian watercolours have kind of adopted the nickname of chocolate box paintings. Because back in the day, if you bought a box of chocolates, more than likely it'd have a painting of something very similar to what I'm drawing today on it. Something very flowery and very countryside, an old cottage, that kind of thing. Typical old English landscape, I guess. So if you haven't heard of Helen Allingham before, just Google the name and you'll see loads and loads and loads of her work. She was quite a prolific artist back in the day. Her work is very recognisable. She often painted these typical English cottages with flower gardens and a few figures in them. A little bit of life in there as well, sometimes like little chickens and things like that running around on the path. But generally her work is very highly detailed and it's absolutely incredible. So go and have a look at Helen's work online after this video, of course, and make sure you watch all the way to the end. Don't you dare click off now. You just did, didn't you? Oh well, never mind. Anyway, for those that are still here, Helen Allingham was a master of detail with watercolour. I've been studying the way that she does the trees, the detail, the textures, and I just cannot fathom it how she does it. It's absolutely incredible work. It's not often you see techniques like this in watercolour, particularly these days. I know back in the day, during the Victorian period, a lot of white paint was used with watercolour. You know, they used to use it like a body colour. They'd mix their watercolour pigments in with the white paint and apply it on top of several layers of watercolour to create these kind of opaque effects with flowers and highlights and all that kind of stuff. And even though I'm drawing this one in graphite, it's by no means an easy scene to reproduce. It's only when you copy paintings from other artists that you really understand the level that they're on. And Helen was on a completely different level to most people. I dread to think how long these paintings took her, because the amount of texture and detail in them is something that I was finding hard to reproduce, even with fine graphite pencils. And I mostly resorted to very fine tipped mechanical pencils to try and get the very fine detail in that Helen got with a paintbrush. It really is incredible work. And the only way that I felt I'd be able to reproduce something like this was to actually use the grid method. It's become a favourite method of mine, actually, using a grid, but particularly for scenes like this that are very complicated, and there's a lot of textures, a lot of different textures as well. And I found that just literally working sometimes, on those very complicated areas, just literally square by square, just taking baby steps, one square at a time, I found to be very helpful, a very helpful approach for when you're trying to tackle a drawing, of this magnitude with this amount of texture and detail. I mean, it's not just one kind of foliage technique here. There's lots and lots of different textures in all the foliage, and you've got to kind of get that right to avoid that kind of monotonous, repetitive look of the same foliage technique just running throughout the drawing. Each tree, each area of ivy and all the different bushes and everything all had a slightly different texture, so that all had to be replicated, in the best way I can, and doing it one square at a time, pencil stroke by pencil stroke, and really taking your time was the way that I approached this drawing. Now the drawing, I didn't actually time the drawing, but it definitely felt like a 50-60 hour kind of drawing. It really was sort of on that kind of time scale there. Usually drawings, A4 drawings with plenty of detail, and it usually take me around 25-30 hours, but this one was certainly double that. But the time scale of this drawing didn't bother me in the slightest. It was a really enjoyable drawing to draw. I really lost myself in this one and really got involved in it. Enjoyed every minute of it, even though, you know, there's a lot of tricky areas in there and there was a lot of backtracking to and froing from one area to another. Once I thought one area was finished, I'd start on another area and then I'd look back on the area I'd just drawn and thought, no, that needs quite a bit more work and a few more adjustments. And that was pretty much the story of the whole picture. But aren't they always like that? You know, there's always a lot of backtracking involved with drawing, particularly drawings with this amount of texture and detail in them. You know, it's hard to get them right first time. And there's always that ugly stage in the drawing, you know, in every area of the drawing, which you kind of have to go through and work past. But it did take a long, long time to do that. But like I say, it was pure escapism for me to do this drawing. You know, put all your troubles and worries behind you and just lose yourself in a lovely scene like this. A really nice drawing to do. Especially with all the troubles that are going on in the world today. I mean, we can all kind of do with a break from that, can't we? I know I can. Anyway, I'll just quickly mention that this project is over on Patreon for anybody that's interested in following along with this drawing and drawing along with it. There's 12 other videos to accompany this one, all in real time. And I'll guide you through all the various stages and steps of the drawing, so you can draw along at home if you want to. There'll be reference photos provided for you over on Patreon. Both the original colour version will be there, a black and white version will be there, and one like you can see me using there, a black and white one with a grid will be there. So there'll be 3 reference photos for you to choose from. If you don't want to draw using a grid, or if you fancy doing this one as a watercolour, you've got a choice there of reference photos if you want. Now the materials you'll need for this one are really quite minimal. I'm using just an A4 sheet of my regular drawing paper, which is made by Daler Rowney. It's a smooth heavyweight version. Obviously I'm using blending stumps, erasers and a little brush there just to blend. But I think for the most part I only used 4 mechanical pencils, a 2H, HB, 2B and 4B. And I think I used a wood case, well I know I used a wood case, 8B pencil to get the extreme darks in there. But apart from that, that's it. That's the beauty of graphite drawing, isn't it? You know, we don't need much kit or very expensive, you know, art supplies or anything like that to, you know, to create really nice drawings. You know, a couple of pencils, an eraser, an old dirty watercolour brush for blending, you know, and a few blending stumps or even cotton swabs, you know, and you can create really nice artwork. And not only that, graphite is a very forgiving medium to work with as well. You know, if you make mistakes, you can easily erase them. If you've got areas that are too hard edge looking, you can easily blend them with blending stumps, cotton swabs, tissues, all that kind of stuff. It really is a wonderful medium to actually work with. And it's one of the mediums that I think all beginners should start with actually, you know, to master a few drawing skills. I'm not talking just with graphite, I'm talking just, you know, drawing in general now. I mean, it's the fundamentals really, isn't it, of any painting or any drawing really, you know, to have a few good drawing skills, regardless of what your chosen medium is going to serve you well. I mean, I do see a lot of artists just go straight onto watercolour paper with a brush, and that's great, you know, they produce lovely work. But for most people, you know, they like to do a bit of a line drawing first, particularly if it's something complicated like this scene, or there's a lot of complicated perspective or something going on in the scene that they're drawing. You know, it's best to get a few markers down there with a pencil, a few indicators, you know, of where you need to be, you know, when you're applying the colour and everything. So drawing really is, you know, an important part of working in any media, I think. I must just quickly apologise actually for the look on the video right now. It's gone kind of sort of a yellow tint there. That's because I'm working in the evening under a lamp. So I apologise for that. But anyway, the video is just about done now. I'm just on the home run, just putting the foreground grass in, which was very, very textured. If you look at the reference photo there, it looks really sort of complicated, doesn't it? Full of texture and varying tones. It took quite a while to do that actually. But yeah, like I say, it was a really nice scene to draw, and it'll be over on my Patreon page, and I'll leave links to Patreon in the end screen cards and in the description below as well for you. Okay, so that's the drawing finished now, and there's the end result. Hope you like that. Thanks very much for viewing, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care everybody, bye for now.